When silence screams louder than words, there comes a moment when the silence is no longer quiet. It becomes heavy, deafening, unbearable. It doesn't speak in words, but in wounds. And if you're listening to this, it's because you've been walking through that silence, maybe for days, maybe for years, trying to hold yourself together while your soul quietly breaks apart. People see you, but they don't hear what you're not saying. You smile, but your silence is screaming for answers. This is what happened to the one who said, "God, show me." They weren't loud, they didn't shout. They simply whispered those words in the dark, barely audible. But heaven heard it like a trumpet blast. Because when the soul reaches its limit, when the pain gets buried too deep to explain, God doesn't need volume. He responds to surrender. That whisper broke a cycle. It interrupted the ordinary. It opened a supernatural door. You've asked yourself why things haven't changed, why the prayers seem to float into nothing, why you're still stuck in patterns that feel more like punishment than process. And I need you to know this. It's not because God hasn't been listening. It's because you haven't yet seen what He's been preparing to reveal. He's been waiting for a deeper cry, not just one of desperation, but one of alignment. That's why you're here. That's why you can't skip this moment. God allowed the silence not to punish you, but to prepare you. Because when He finally speaks, when He reveals what's behind the closed doors of your confusion, it will not be to soothe you with temporary peace. It will be to wake you up, to realign your steps, to show you what you were never meant to carry, and who you were never meant to be. The one who said, "God, show me," didn't know they were triggering a divine unraveling. What came next wasn't comfort. It was confrontation. The truth began to surface. The hidden things came into the light. And that's where it begins for you too. You're about to confront the silence you tried to live with. You're about to see what that silence was always hiding. But let me warn you, when God shows you, He doesn't show you partially. He doesn't just show you people, He shows you yourself. The thoughts you've ignored, the patterns you've justified, the roots of pain you've dressed in prayer but never surrendered. And it will hurt before it heals. It will break before it rebuilds. But this is where it all begins. Not in the noise, not in the miracles, but in the moment when your soul finally says, "Enough." That's what makes this moment holy. You've been chosen to hear this because something inside of you is crying out for more. You're done pretending. You're done hiding behind faith you don't feel. You're done being strong for everyone else while dying in silence. And heaven is not ignoring you. God has positioned this exact word at this exact time to say to you, "I see you." Write this in the comments right now if this speaks to your spirit. God, show me what I'm afraid to see. That is your prophetic declaration. That is your opening of the door. That's how the spiritual world knows you're not playing games anymore. And if you believe this message was sent to you by the Holy Spirit, like this video and subscribe to the channel so we can continue to help others hear the voice of God. When you do that, you're not just supporting content, you're helping spread the word that delivers people from spiritual blindness. Because the silence you've lived with is about to be broken, not by noise, but by revelation. The cry behind closed doors. There are prayers that never make it past the lips, but they still reach heaven like a shout. Tears that fall without witnesses, yet they shake the atmosphere of the throne room. You know what it's like. The quiet breakdowns in the middle of the night. The silent why when no one's watching. The desperate inner scream, "God, do you even see me?" And still, silence. But don't be fooled. Heaven was never ignoring you. It was waiting for your heart to break past the surface-level prayers, waiting for your soul to crack open wide enough for glory to pour in, waiting for the moment when the cry behind the closed doors would become a doorway itself, not to answers, but to encounter. The person who whispered, "God, show me," didn't say it in front of a crowd. They weren't on a stage. They were on the floor, alone, tired, no more masks, no more pretending. That cry wasn't polished, it wasn't poetic, but it was powerful because it was real. And in the kingdom of heaven, authenticity is louder than volume. When you cry like that, not to manipulate, not to perform, but to surrender, you activate something supernatural. Because God is not drawn to strength. He's drawn to the honest collapse of a soul that finally admits, I can't do this without you. Maybe you've been living behind doors too. Doors of shame, doors of guilt, doors of trying to be strong for everyone else while you rot inside. And now you're wondering why God hasn't answered, why he hasn't kicked the door open and fixed it all. But what if I told you he already has? What if the silence wasn't absence, but strategy? What if the door wasn't locked? It just needed a key you've been afraid to use. That key is surrender. Not surrender in theory, not a whispered yes, while your heart still says maybe, but real, raw, uncontrollable surrender, the kind that empties your hands so heaven can finally fill them. This is not the time to delay. This cry, this moment, is sacred. Heaven responds not when we impress, but when we collapse. And that's why you're here, because God is about to take the thing you cried about in private and use it as the very stage for your public restoration. But first, he's going to show you the root, the hidden infection that's been bleeding in your soul, the thing behind the thing, the pain behind the pattern, the memory you buried but never healed. And when he shows you, it won't be to shame you. It will be to heal you. But you must be willing to see what you've spent your life avoiding. There's a reason you couldn't move forward, a reason it felt like you were fighting something invisible. You were. But now the veil is lifting. Now the doors are trembling. And the cry you whispered behind those doors is turning into the shout that brings them down. If this resonates with you, if something inside you is trembling right now, write this in the comments. Lord, break every door hiding what you want to heal. The declaration is not just for you. It's a call into the spirit realm. It's a way of telling the enemy, you no longer have access to the hidden places of my soul. And if this word is confirming what your spirit has already been feeling, help us reach others. Like this video, subscribe to this channel. It may seem like a simple act, but it tells YouTube this message brings life, not harm. And we need more people to hear that God still answers cries made behind closed doors. Because now, he's getting ready to open yours, the night the invisible became unforgettable. There's a moment when your room becomes more than a room, when the air changes, when what you cannot see suddenly becomes more real than what's in front of your eyes. That moment happened to the one who said, God, show me. It didn't happen at church. It didn't come with thunder or flashing lights. It came in stillness, but with weight. Because when heaven answers a cry for revelation, it doesn't knock, it enters. That night, they weren't looking for goosebumps. They weren't chasing emotions. They just needed something real. One sign, one touch, one reason not to quit. And when the words left their mouth, God, show me, the atmosphere responded, not with noise, but with presence, thick, holy, heavy, the kind of presence that doesn't just surround you, it searches you. You may have never seen an angel, but you've felt the war in the unseen. You've walked through battles you couldn't explain, panic that made no sense, dreams that left you shaken, doors that closed too fast, relationships that shattered too easily. And you've wondered, what's really happening around me? The truth is, there is a war for your clarity. The moment you ask God to show you, you declare war on everything that's been hiding in the dark. This is why it feels worse before it feels better, why your sleep gets attacked, why your peace feels fragile. Because when you cry out for revelation, the spirit realm responds, and not just the Holy One. Darkness fights to keep you blind, because sight gives power. And Satan knows that once you see the truth, you'll never live the same. That night, everything changed. Not because God finally spoke, but because the heart finally surrendered. Revelation didn't come as words. It came as knowing, as clarity, as piercing awareness, and from that moment they could never go back. Because when you see the invisible, the visible becomes irrelevant. God is preparing you for this kind of night. The kind where you no longer guess if he's near. You feel him. The kind where conviction isn't fear, it's freedom. Where the presence in your room is so strong, you forget what it felt like to be alone. But for that to happen, you must stop running, stop numbing, stop drowning yourself in noise, because heaven moves in stillness, and if you keep resisting silence, you'll keep missing God. What you've called confusion might actually be God dismantling your distractions. What feels like darkness could be divine preparation, because he doesn't show himself to impress you. He shows himself to invite you. And when you finally say, God, show me, with no agenda, no demand, no deadline, the veil begins to tear. And when that happens, you'll never unsee what he shows you. You'll never be able to go back to lukewarm prayers, shallow words, or borrowed faith. He'll brand your heart with clarity, and it will cost you comfort, but it will give you authority. If you want this to happen in your life, declare it now in the comments. God, open my eyes to the war I cannot see. This isn't just a comment. It's a cry, a prophetic alignment, a declaration of readiness. And if this word pierced something in you, don't scroll away. Like this video, subscribe to this channel. When you do that, you help this kind of truth reach those who are starving for clarity. You help the invisible become unforgettable for someone else too. Because the moment you said, God, show me, you invited heaven to invade your night. The vision that changed everything. There is a kind of seeing that ruins you for anything less than the truth. The moment you say, God, show me, with no conditions, you are no longer safe in the blindness that once protected your comfort. The person who said those words didn't know they were stepping into the fire of clarity. They only knew they couldn't live another day in spiritual fog, and what happened next shattered everything they thought they knew. The vision didn't come in a dream. It came in a moment of stillness, sudden, sharp, undeniable. Their eyes were open, but what they saw wasn't physical. It was something behind the veil, something eternal. They saw pain, not just theirs, but others. They saw cycles, patterns, the chains their choices had formed, the trauma they had normalized, the voices they had obeyed without knowing they were lies. It wasn't beautiful, it was violent, because truth always wages war against illusion. God had heard their cry, but he didn't respond with comfort. He responded with confrontation, because when you ask to see, you don't get to choose what's revealed. You get the whole picture, and for them it started with themselves. The person in the mirror was not who they thought they were. It was a version shaped by wounds, not by identity. And that was the first thing God had to dismantle. You've been asking for direction, for clarity, for the next step. But are you prepared for what comes before that? God cannot show you your future until he corrects your vision of your past. If not, you will walk forward blind. You will carry into your purpose what was never meant to follow you there. This is why so many feel stuck. Because clarity doesn't begin with where you're going. It begins with where you really are. And so the vision deepened. They saw faces. Some they trusted who weren't sent by God. Some they hated who had been vessels of truth. They saw moments when heaven tried to reach them, but pride got in the way. And suddenly, they couldn't blame anyone else. The enemy wasn't just out there. The enemy had been within. Thoughts, agreements, internal vows, and all of it had to be broken. When God shows you, it's not about information, it's about transformation. He doesn't reveal to impress, he reveals to rebuild. But the rebuilding begins with surrender, not a quiet whisper of consent, a full, painful tearing down of everything you've used to protect your wounds. This is the kind of vision that costs everything. But in exchange, you gain your true self, the one formed in Christ, not in crisis. That's what's at stake here. And you're next. If you're ready, if your spirit is already trembling under conviction, write this in the comments. God, tear the veil and let me see the truth, even if it hurts. That's not a prayer for the weak. It's a declaration that you're done living half blind, half healed, half alive. And if this word is bringing tears, clarity, or shaking something loose in your spirit, do one more thing. Like this video and subscribe. Not because we need numbers, but because this message needs reach. This kind of truth gets buried by the algorithm unless you lift it. Because there are people right now crying out for light, and your action helps them find it. God is ready to show you, but you must be willing to let go of the version of yourself you made to survive. What he shows you will change everything. The answer was already there. You just couldn't see it. We often imagine that when God finally answers, the heavens will split, the winds will shift, and the world around us will suddenly change. But most of the time, the change isn't around us. It's within us. When this person cried out, "God, show me," they weren't expecting silence. They weren't expecting stillness. But that's all they got, until something subtle, almost cruel, happened. God showed them that what they had been waiting for was there all along. It wasn't hidden in some far-off miracle or locked behind years of suffering. It had been placed right in front of them, camouflaged by their own fears, their distractions, their own refusal to accept what God was trying to reveal. Because sometimes the hardest truth is this: you saw it, but you didn't want to see it. That's what makes the blindness so dangerous. It's not that God doesn't answer. It's that we often don't like his answer. We filter his voice through our pain. We demand signs while ignoring his whispers. And all the while, we say we're waiting on him, when in truth, he's been waiting on us to finally look, truly look, at what we already know deep down. This is how he began to break the person who asked to see. He showed them the patterns, the ignored warnings, the misplaced loyalty, the way they'd silenced conviction and called it peace. It wasn't that God had been silent. It was that they had chosen noise over truth. And maybe that's you. Maybe you've been praying for God to speak, but the real fear isn't that he won't. It's that he already did. Through people you didn't want to listen to, through moments you brushed off, through the gentle conviction you labeled as anxiety. And now, he's putting it in front of you again, raw, unfiltered, undeniable. The answer was always there, but until your heart was humbled enough to see it, it would have only served as judgment. That's why he waited. That's why the silence felt so long, because the revelation that heals must come after the pride that blinds has been broken. God is not playing games with your life. He's not hiding his will like a cruel puzzle. He's laid it out in your conscience, in the word, in the people he's sent, in the doors he's opened and closed. But to see it, you have to stop arguing, stop bargaining, stop praying with your mind already made up. This person realized that their real cry wasn't "God, show me." It was "God, show me what I already know but refuse to accept." That's where the healing began. Not when they got new revelation, but when they surrendered to what had been there all along. Write this in the comments if you feel the weight of this truth. God, forgive me for ignoring the answers you already gave me. That may be the most powerful prayer you've ever typed. Because when repentance aligns with revelation, chains fall fast. And if this message stripped you down to the truth, if you feel exposed and yet strangely free, don't click away. Like this video, subscribe to this channel. Help this word confront others the way it confronted you. Don't let it end with you. God isn't being silent. He's just no longer repeating what he already revealed. And now, he's waiting for you to respond. Why you had to break before you could see. The breaking didn't mean you failed. It meant you were finally soft enough for God to shape you. It wasn't punishment. It was preparation. But you didn't know that when it happened. All you could feel was the collapse of trust, of identity, of everything you thought you'd built in faith. When this person said, "God, show me," they had no idea the answer would come not through peace, but through the sound of everything familiar falling apart. They thought they were asking for a revelation. God gave them a demolition, because some truths can't live on top of old lies, and some clarity only comes after the structures of pride, fear, and false identity have been completely shattered. That's why he allowed the breaking. Not because he was cruel, but because he couldn't let you build your future on foundations he never laid. For the one who cried out, the breaking looked like abandonment, like betrayal, like prayers that didn't work. But what they didn't know was that the breaking was heaven's surgery. Every piece that fell was something they had clung to that was killing them slowly. And if God hadn't intervened, if he hadn't allowed it to break, they would have continued living blind, numb, asleep. This is where most people run. They cry, "God, show me." But then they scream when he does, because his method doesn't match their expectations. But God is not obligated to fit your comfort. He's committed to your calling. And sometimes the only way forward is through complete disorientation. What broke you was not meant to destroy you. It was meant to deliver you from people, from patterns, from the version of you that was surviving instead of surrendering. That's why you couldn't hold it together. That's why everything slipped from your grasp. Because what you were holding wasn't from him. It was keeping you from him. God will never bless who you pretend to be. And so he breaks through the layers, the performance, the self-reliance, the fake smiles, the spiritual language with no power, until all that's left is a soul crying honestly, "I can't do this anymore." That's when vision comes. That's when heaven speaks. That's when the veil lifts and you finally see not just him, but yourself. And maybe you're there now, in the aftermath, in the questions, wondering why it had to hurt like this. Let me tell you why, because some chains only break when your strength does. Some idols only fall when your world collapses. Some prayers only become real when your voice is shaking. If this speaks to your spirit, write it boldly in the comments. God, thank you for breaking what was breaking me. That phrase isn't weakness, it's awakening. It tells the spirit realm you finally see the breaking as mercy, not abandonment. And if this word met you in your mess, if it gave language to the silent pain you've been carrying, like this video and subscribe to this channel. Not just for you, but for someone else who's right now falling apart and thinking God walked away. Let them know he didn't walk away. He stepped in. The vision you asked for couldn't come until your walls came down. But now they have. And what you see next will change your life. When you don't know what to do next, there's a kind of paralysis that doesn't come from laziness. It comes from exhaustion. Not physical, but spiritual. The kind where your soul is stuck between what broke you and what God hasn't revealed yet. That's where this person was when they said, "God, show me." Not desperate for more blessings, desperate for direction. They had no more energy to guess, no more heart to keep making the wrong decisions. Because when you've tried everything, prayed, waited, fasted, cried, and still don't know what to do, that's when confusion becomes torment. It feels like being punished for not hearing a voice you've begged to hear. You wake up and say, "What now?" You go to bed and whisper, "Why still nothing?" And slowly, silently, you begin to wonder if maybe it's you, maybe you missed it, maybe God left. But he didn't. The silence wasn't rejection, it was redirection. This person thought they needed a path, but God showed them they needed perspective, because clarity doesn't begin with answers, it begins with alignment. And as long as your soul is crowded with fear, opinions, pressure, guilt, God could shout and you'd still hear nothing. So he waits. He waits until the noise dies down, until the idols you once trusted fail you, until the voices around you lose influence. And only then he whispers. What he whispered changed everything. It wasn't a map. It wasn't a 5-step plan. It was one direction: come closer, because God doesn't guide from a distance. He leads by drawing you into himself, not into a result, into a relationship, into surrender. And that's where many are stuck. They don't want the presence, they want the plan. But God doesn't give the plan to those who refuse to follow the presence. That's why so many stay frozen. Because they want certainty more than trust, control more than intimacy, a guarantee more than a guide. This person had to let go of needing to know, of needing to feel ready, of needing to understand everything before taking the next step. And when they did, when they simply said, "God, I don't know where to go, but I refuse to move without you," that's when the atmosphere shifted. God doesn't move for the clever, he moves for the surrendered. And sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is stand still, not in fear, in faith. The kind of stillness that says, if you don't go, I won't go either. That's what releases guidance. That's what unlocks supernatural clarity. If this is your season, if you feel frozen, numb, waiting on direction, declare this now in the comments. God, I won't move without your voice. Let that be your anchor. Let that be your cry. Because once you've truly decided that his presence is more important than your progress, he'll begin to lead you step by step. And if this message gave language to your confusion, like this video and subscribe to this channel. We're building a place where those who feel stuck can hear the voice of God again. You're not alone in this fog, and there is light coming. Sometimes the next step is not a leap forward. It's falling to your knees and saying, "Show me your way, not mine." And that's when the path appears, not in front of you, but within you. The spiritual battle. You didn't know you were in the moment this person whispered, "God, show me." They thought they were asking for peace. What they got was war. Not because God wanted to scare them, but because that cry opened their eyes. And with eyes open, you can finally see what's been hiding in the dark. What you've been calling delay may have been an invisible resistance. What you've called anxiety might have been spiritual pressure. Not every closed door in your life was God's will. Some were hell's strategy. The enemy isn't afraid of your routine prayers. He's afraid of your awakening. He fears the moment you stop being passive and start seeking truth. Because a Christian who can see is dangerous. This person didn't realize how much warfare had been launched against their mind. They didn't see the spiritual chains of fear, of shame, of confusion. Chains that didn't rattle or make noise, but slowly strangled clarity. When they asked God to reveal, he didn't just show them angels. He exposed demons, assignments that had been launched against their family, their emotions, their identity, and it shook them. You cannot fight what you refuse to see, and that's why the devil works overtime to keep you distracted. He keeps you busy so you don't discern. He keeps you offended so you won't forgive. He keeps you addicted to what numbs so you never confront what's real. That's not coincidence. It's warfare, and you're in the middle of it. But here's the truth. God never reveals a battle without equipping you to win it. This isn't about fear. This is about awareness. Because the moment you recognize the fight is not against people, not against your job, your spouse, your past, but against principalities and patterns of darkness, you change how you respond. You stop blaming. You start binding. You stop panicking. You start praying. The person who asked to see had to be taught how to war. They couldn't just cry, they had to declare. They had to cancel every agreement they had unknowingly made with lies. They had to say out loud, "I renounce the spirit of fear. I break every generational curse. I reject every thought that is not from the mind of Christ." And when they did, the atmosphere in their life began to shift. Not because the battle ended, but because they finally stepped into authority. You don't need to fear the enemy, but you do need to wake up to his strategy. Because passivity in the spirit is permission to darkness, and silence is agreement, unless your silence is in stillness before God. If you've been seeing cycles repeat, confusion increase, heaviness that won't lift, collective vision that doesn't make sense. It's time to stop asking what's wrong and start declaring what's behind this must be exposed and removed. If you're ready for that, write this in the comments as your act of spiritual alignment. God, expose every unseen battle and teach my hands to war. This is not a prayer for spectators. It's for sons and daughters ready to fight for what's theirs. And if this word opened your eyes to a fight you didn't know you were in, like this video and subscribe. Let's build a generation that doesn't just endure warfare. We overcome it. And when YouTube sees people responding to this, it allows us to reach others who are still trapped, still blind, still tired of battles they don't understand. Because the cry for clarity is not weakness, it's a weapon. And when you finally say, God, show me what's really happening, heaven arms you with truth, and truth is how you win. The moment heaven said, now you're ready, there is a moment in the spirit that shifts everything, a moment when heaven, which once felt silent, suddenly moves. Not because God changed his mind, but because your heart finally aligned. The person who cried out, God, show me, had no idea they were being observed by heaven, not just in their actions, but in their posture. God had been waiting, not for perfection, for surrender. What happened next wasn't loud, it wasn't spectacular, but it was sacred. The weight of his presence filled the room, not to overwhelm, but to confirm, now you're ready. Not because they had earned it, but because they had emptied themselves of everything else. Pride had fallen, entitlement had died. The question still existed, but the posture had changed. It was no longer God, explain it, but God, I trust you even if you don't. Heaven waits for that moment. Because revelation without surrender leads to rebellion. But when your heart bends low enough, God begins to lift you. And that's when things start to move fast. Not because you're forcing them, but because you've stopped standing in the way. For this person, doors began to open. Conversations brought clarity. Scriptures leapt off the page. Peace replaced panic. Why? Because God saw the shift. The posture of the soul had said what words never could. Your will is enough for me. You might be asking why you haven't seen the breakthrough. Why God hasn't answered that prayer, opened that door, removed that burden. But what if he's been waiting, not for the situation to change, but for your spirit to break out of its resistance? You cannot carry divine vision with divided loyalty. God will not share space with idols. And sometimes the idol is your own plan. This is why he delays, not to punish, but to prepare. Because premature revelation produces pride, but revelation in its due season births humility, worship, and obedience. That's what happened in this moment. Heaven, watching in silence, finally spoke, now you're ready. And everything shifted, not just around them, within them. It's not a question of whether God wants to reveal. It's a matter of whether you're truly ready to see, ready to obey, ready to release the outcome, ready to lay down the version of you that still fights for control, because that's the moment heaven moves. Not when you scream loud enough, but when you bow low enough. If you feel like God has been silent, but your heart is finally breaking open with readiness, declare this now in the comments. Lord, I surrender. If you say I'm ready, I will follow. Let that be your yes. Not emotional, not temporary. A covenant yes. The kind that gives God room to speak without interruption. And if this word hit the very center of what you've been walking through, like this video and subscribe. Not just for more content, but to send a signal to the algorithm and the spiritual realm that this kind of truth must reach more people. Because many are on the edge of revelation, but they don't know what heaven is waiting for. He's not waiting for you to get stronger. He's waiting for you to get real. This was never just about you. The moment they said, God, show me, they believed they were asking for help with their own pain. They thought it was personal, private, a request for healing, for clarity, for restoration. But what heaven revealed was something deeper, something heavier. This wasn't just about one soul being mended. It was about others being set free through that soul's surrender. Because when God shows you the truth, it's never just for your healing, it's for your assignment. This person had no idea that their process was prophetic, that their story would become someone else's survival, that their scars would carry words they never planned to speak. But that's how God works. He never wastes suffering. He never answers just for your benefit. When He gives you sight, it's to lead others out of blindness. That's why the battle was so long. That's why the silence felt so cruel, because what you're being entrusted with is bigger than your personal breakthrough. God was building in you a voice, one that couldn't be formed by theory, only by fire. The kind of voice that carries authority, not noise. Weight, not just words. And now He's asking, what will you do with what I showed you? You've seen too much to go back. You've felt too much to stay quiet. You've walked through the valley, not just to survive it, but to map the way out for someone else. And the moment you said, God, show me, you weren't just volunteering for answers. You were stepping into a calling. The enemy knew this. That's why he fought you so hard. It wasn't just about silencing your prayer. It was about silencing your purpose. Because if you ever really saw, if you ever really woke up, you'd become a weapon, a lighthouse in the middle of someone else's storm. And that's exactly who you are now. This is not the end of your process. It's the beginning of your ministry. You may never stand on a stage, but your obedience will echo through families, friendships, generations. Every revelation God gave you is now a seed you're meant to plant. Every truth He uncovered in you is oil someone else will need. This is why you can't stay silent. This is why you can't shrink back into comfort. Because people are connected to your yes. Chains will fall when you speak. Doors will open when you testify. But only if you understand, this was never just about you. If you're ready to accept that this revelation wasn't just a gift, but a responsibility, write this in the comments. God, I receive the weight of what you showed me. Use me. That phrase is not light. It's an invitation to legacy. And if this final word awakened your purpose, like this video and subscribe. Because what God just did in your life can now become someone else's rescue. We're not building a platform. We're building an army of those who see, of those who speak, of those who carry light. Now let's seal this moment with prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. This isn't the end, it's your beginning. Now go, and let what He showed you become a light for others.